Hey everybody, it's the Linkzilla here, coming at you with a rather impromptu, but long overdue, and mostly improvised kind of ranty message about what's going on with the channel. As you guys probably noticed over the last week or so, the Ratchet and Clank playthrough, which had mostly been ignored for the last week, suddenly came back in full in force, with 2 videos being uploaded a day. And that's ultimately because I had to basically get these videos out as quickly as possible so that I could get ready to make this episode. For those of you who have watched all the way to the playthrough and got all the way up to episode 13, you might know what's going on, or at least anticipate what's been happening. You see, like I basically said in that video, there was a problem going on with my PlayStation 2, and this is ultimately the reason why that video is entitled, This Playthrough Will Self-Destruct in 3, 2, 1. Because unfortunately, my Ratchet and Clank playthrough is, for all intents and purposes, dead. Basically, I've got the death certificate right here. Morally, ethically, physically, spiritually, undeniably, and reliably dead. So, what happened? It's basically like I told you in that video itself. My PlayStation 2 has been having problems playing the Ratchet and Clank game, and I'm not exactly sure why it did this. I do have some suspicions that it could be that possibly the PS2 just overheats way too much, because I do have it up right next to my big desktop computer, and that generates a lot of heat in and of itself. So in addition to basically its own heat that it has to generate in order to play the games, it's also taking all the heat from the big desktop computer. But I basically have tried moving the PlayStation 2 to other places. I've even basically turned the PS2 on while having it in direct line of my air conditioning, blasting it with cool air, and it doesn't seem to basically be working. So what I'm initially getting at is that, well, it's like I said, the game will boot up, but the problem is the cutscenes will not load. Every single time I get into a spaceship and try to go from one planet to the next, or I have an interaction with somebody, or even when I pause the game basically freezes and crashes. So, as you guys saw from that last video, as I was playing the Ratchet section of Gaspar, I decided to go at it and just persevere and keep on playing until I basically got that video done. Unfortunately, I reached a point, as I tried to basically boot up and do the next video, it became clear to me that it wasn't going to load. I basically left the PlayStation on for hours, hoping that the cutscene would finally load and I would finally be able to get to planet Hoven to continue the game, which is heartbreaking because I think that is the exact center point of the game, in which you are really halfway there. So what I'm saying is, if not for this, I could have not finished Ratchet and Clank in just a few days. But basically, considering that in the Gaspar episode itself, I literally said that waiting in between cutscenes took 5 hours before the game popped up, and the fact that as I tried to do another one, it took even longer than that, I basically had to admit defeat. It's like I said in the video, I'm throwing in the white towel, I'm waving the white flag. I can't do this anymore because I'm running out of time. I don't have time to wait for my PlayStation 2 to cooperate with me in the hopes of finishing Ratchet and Clank. The first Ratchet and Clank game that, quite frankly, compared to its sequels, I don't really care for all that much. Granted, that kind of basically is in keeping with why I played this game, given what we're going to talk about later. So the point is that I can't get Planet Hoven to load, and the worst part about it is, after I basically tried resetting the console several times, I now can't even get into a save file anymore. So now it's basically not even a matter of getting to the planet. Now I can't even get into a save file. And I can't get into any other save file either, and I can't start a new save file either. Basically, the playthrough is just, it's dead. It's dead in the water at this point, because there's really nothing that I can do. I mean, I'm because, like, keeping the PS2 cooled with the air conditioning didn't work, I'm led to believe that it's not something that's initially wrong with the PlayStation 2 in and of itself. I think that it might be something to do with the Ratchet and Clank game, because as I basically have tested with other games, they seem to work just fine. So there's something clearly wrong with Ratchet and Clank, and I just don't have the means or resources to go out and find another copy of Ratchet and Clank to replace this one that I've had for basically nearly the last 20 years now. So, anyways, that is basically why Ratchet and Clank had to die, and it was a bit disappointing because I really was getting into the game. The gameplay might be clunky in compared to Ratchet and Clank's successors, but I was honestly starting to have so much fun with the weapon variety and being able to just do all the things. Plus, I was getting really close to the point where I would be able to go back and start farming bolts to get the Rhino, which would have immediately equalized everything in the playthrough. So, anyways, I am disappointed that my Ratchet and Clank run is now basically over before it really had a chance to begin, but the truth is that I basically waited far too long to get started on Ratchet and Clank anyway, so honestly, it's not that much of a heartbreaking loss. The main reason that I played Ratchet and Clank ultimately has to do with what I have planned for October, which is, well, this month, starting tomorrow, because this will be going up on October Friday the 13th. So, okay, so the whole idea of Ratchet and Clank, the reason why I began playing it was because last year, around this time, I played Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy, celebrating its 20th anniversary. And, like I said, basically I do the whole cheeky thing where I give vague details about what is coming next, and how I talked about how Jak and Daxter, when it came to them being the mascots for the PlayStation, they had some major competition fighting for that role, and unfortunately, according to some people, Jak and Daxter lost out. And I was, of course, referring to Ratchet and Clank, mainly because I was going to talk about how the combination of platforming, collectathon, and gunplay elements of Ratchet and Clank would ultimately tie into the next game of what I was going to be playing on my channel in terms of retro-style games from the early 2000s. And, well, it's basically like I said, I was going to basically go with Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy isn't really my favorite of the Jak and Daxter games. Effectively speaking, what I remember most fondly from the Jak and Daxter franchise, and what I think that the identity of the Jak and Daxter franchise that most everybody can associate with the franchise now, well, that didn't come until later. Thank you guys for listening in, and I hope you guys tune into my channel tomorrow when we begin our next playthrough. Later.